All right, next up we're going to learn about smart objects and vector images. So working with Illustrator files within Photoshop. Photoshop can handle Illustrator files in two different ways. It can bring it in and rasterize it at whatever size and resolution you say on the first step, and then it's just pixels or bitmaps. Or you can bring it in as a smart object, and then obviously it remembers its origin, which is in Illustrator. And since Illustrator is vector art, it can, resize and do different things based on its Illustrator original status. So let's just make a new file. We're going to just specify the US letter or paper size as whatever. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go with the 8.5 by 11 at 300 or high resolution. And just say, we can actually name it right now if you want. We're going to call this logos and say create. So we have a blank canvas and it's already named for us. First thing we can do is open an Illustrator file and turn it into raster, or turn it into rasters, bitmaps, pixels. So we're going to do a file, open, and then we're going to navigate to our folder, and we're going to choose baitlogo.ai. This is the Illustrator file, and click open. Now we have an option. It thinks it's a PDF because Illustrator files are also saved that way. So it's asking us what size, and as is, straight from Illustrator, this can be 1 inch by 1 inch at high resolution at 300. So if we wanted this to be 3 inches tall, we could change these numbers right here to be 3 inches, and it would take the Illustrator file, make that bigger first, then bring it in and rasterize it. We're not going to do that. We're just going to take it as it is, but this is where you have the chance to tell it what size, what physical size to be once it turns into pixels in Photoshop. So we'll just say okay to that. Here it is. It opened it separately, but it is pixels. So if I were to zoom in on it, eventually we're going to see it's a bunch of pixels. All right, we're going to take this file and we're going to drag it into the blank document we made. So I'm just going to use the move tool, and remember all you have to do is grab onto this layer, click and hold down on your mouse, drag up to activate this tab, drag it into it, and let go. So you're just dragging and dropping from tab to tab basically. So we now have layer 1, and this is our rasterized logo. And again, same thing, we can zoom in on it. Here's 100%. That's what it looks like. I'm at 100% view. Looks great. The other way we can bring it in is as a smart object. So we're going to do a file, and then we're going to do a place embedded. So it's going to embed it in this file. From here, we're going to navigate to the Bait logo again, and we're going to say place. Notice we don't get the option to tell it how big to be right now. It's just going to say, okay, I'm going to place it for you. So we'll just say, okay. And here it is, but right away we have our bounding box, which means it's ready for us to transform it, or the transformation bounding box. So now is our option to resize it if we want to. I'm not going to bother because I want it to be the same look as the one next to it. But if we wanted to make it bigger, we would simply drag our bounding box or do something up here in the width and height area and say, okay. So right now they look exactly the same. Move that one closer and show you. Now I'm zoomed in, so they both look pixely because I'm at 200%, but at 100% they look exactly the same. All right, now when we go to change them, oh, and by the way, look at your layers panel. Whenever we place something embedded, it automatically comes in as a smart object. That means that it is remembering its origin, which is Illustrator, which is resolution independent. We can change things without any problem. All right, let's take our layer 1, which is our rasterized layer, and let's transform it, Command T, and let's do 500% and say okay. And I'm going to make my document a little bit bigger here And I'm going to rearrange these so that we can see them side by side. Okay, so that's our 500%. I'm going to view this at 100%. So I'm viewing at 100% and ew, you can see how pixelized this is. Pixelated. Let's go to our bait logo, the smart logo, smart object, and do a transform on that one and tell that to be 500% and say, okay, wow, big difference, right? I'll drag this one up close to this one so you can see side by side. I need to zoom out a little bit. And then I should have made this the other orientation so they could be side by side a little bit better, but I think without any hardship here, you can see the difference. This one is just pixels and we told it to be 5 times as big and it got ugly. This one remembered its Illustrator original file and made it larger in Illustrator first and then rasterized it so that it looks great here. So we can also use smart objects when we bring in Illustrator files into Photoshop, which can definitely be helpful as well. And then, as you can imagine, if we were to go back into Illustrator, open this bait logo and maybe put a red gradient on here and save it in Illustrator, it would automatically populate as the red one here back in Photoshop because they're speaking to each other and it's referencing its original file or whatever the original file gets saved over as. All right, let's just close this file and we're going to make another new one to show you another perk of using smart objects. Let's do a new file. Let's make this one 10 inches wide by 8, and obviously it's going to be wide, landscape mode. We're at, let's see, let's make this a photo preset. I'm sorry. So go to photo and then do a 10 by 8. It's going to be at 300 pixels per inch, which is great. And we can name this one Town Hall Prints. So 8 by 10 blank document is our starting point. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do File, Place Embedded. In your textbook, it just says Place. That doesn't exist anymore. Place Embedded is the one that we want because that automatically turns it into a smart object, which is our goal here. So Place Embedded. We're going to navigate to our Chapter 8 files and take the file called Town Hall and place it. And we're just going to move it up to this top left corner and accept it. So click the check or hit return on your keyboard. Notice in the layers panel, it has the smart object icon in the layers panel. So we know that that's a smart object. It can always refer back to the original document. We are just going to duplicate this 3 more times. So hold Option or Alt and drag a copy over, place it right here, drag another copy down, and another copy over so that we have 4. So if this were an actual photo that you're trying to print out on photo paper, you could get 4 prints per 1 sheet of paper and then just cut them down with your trimmer. So we have 4 layers. Why do I have more than that? I must have duplicated one. Yep, I think that's a spare. Okay, we should have 4 layers. And what is an issue that you see when you look at this image? We talked about it probably in week 2 or 3. Things aren't perpendicular or the level is off. It's keystoning. It has some issues. It looks like it's tilting back and away from us. So we would have to go fix this 4 times over if these were just 4 regular layers. But because they're smart layers, we can simply edit the contents of the smart object and it will update. So we can double click on any one of these thumbnails because they all refer to the same smart object. And when we do that, it actually opens another tab of the original called Town Hall JPEG. And we now can work on this image and fix the keystoning. So we're going to do a Command A to select everything. then a Command T to enter free transform, and then we're going to hold Command as we pull this left top, and if you hold Shift when you're doing it, you won't bounce up and down like this, you'll just go straight out. So pull that out to the left. Our goal here is to get this left side being perpendicular and looking better. So when you're happy with the keystoning, click on the OK. And then remember, we're in a separate file completely. We're in this one. And the little star always tells you that you have changes made since you've last saved, so we need to save it. So if we simply go to close it out, it's going to say, hey, do you want to save this? And we do. We're going to click Save. Now watch what happens. Back here in our Town Hall prints, they're all corrected. All 4 layers are referencing the one that we just fixed, so it's perfect. We have made that change. That's another time-saving and step-saving attribute of using smart objects. You guys don't have to launch Bridge. I'm just going to show you this quickly, but I'm going to pop over into Bridge. And here is our Chapter 8 textbook files. And notice that this one still is Keystone, or weird. It looks goofy. So when we come over here, back when we were in Photoshop and we were editing the contents of that smart object, we're actually working on like a copy of the file, not the original one, and that copy is tucked away in a secret hiding place. So yes, it did the fix, but it actually didn't overwrite the original yet, and we see that here in Bridge. So if we ever want that to be fixed, like we would never want to refer back to this tipped over version, so back in Photoshop, if we come over here and we right click on any one of these layers, one of the options we have is choose to export the contents, and that's going to basically overwrite that original file everywhere, including on Bridge. So here it says, here it is, save it as Town Hall in Chapter 8. Yep, that's what we want to do. We click Save, and now that fix is made permanently. If we go back to Bridge, it's fixed, yeah, right here. There we go. We have 2. We have a JPEG and a JPG. That's interesting. I must have had that in the save command, calling it JPEG with an E. So it's not a big deal. It's just if you ever do go back to Bridge and it looks funky again, that's why. But it clearly saved it and updated everything in your smart objects. So smart objects are going to update successfully only when the file name and the location remain unchanged. So if you ever move pictures out of a folder or move them around on drives, the smart objects are not going to know where to go to find that original, and they won't update in your document. So if you ever are having problems, you need to go back and double check that the path is where you expect it to be and that it knows where to go find that file. All right, we can close this and we'll move on.